We are live, live, live. Thank you guys for watching NYSTV. This is John Pounders, your host. And we know you guys could be anywhere tonight, but you guys are right here with us in our own form of church that we have 4 or 5 nights a week. And we appreciate you guys being here tonight for sure. We got John Hall in here as our co-host. We also got Daniel listening in to ask questions when he can. But we also have Zen Garcia here tonight, which we've had Zen on before. For those of you that have listened to other shows that we had it before. We were talking about Cain being the son of Lucifer, and he had a book out about that. So today we're going to be talking about the flat Earth and why it's important. He's written a book about the flat Earth, and it makes it. There's a lot of flat Earth talk going around right now. Some of our friends are doing research on it, and it's becoming something we can't really ignore anymore, something that we have to kind of look into and really just see what the scripture says about this subject, because we can sit there and believe science, we can believe NASA, we can believe all these different people that have told us that the earth is round. We can do that if we want to, but we can also see what the Bible says about it. And I'm convinced after reading the Bible. Now, this is convinced what the Bible says about it, that the Bible does speak of not necessarily a flat earth, but an earth that is not round and globular, that sits on columns, it may be round, but not necessarily flat. Flat is a two-dimensional plane, but I think it still has 3 dimensions, but according to the scripture, it sits on these columns, and that there's 4 corners of the earth and stuff. So the Bible does talk about a flat earth of sorts. And my phone is on making all kinds of noises. I apologize for that. But, so we have to be on guard to see what it says and see what the interpretations are. There's a lot of people that will say the scripture says the earth is a globe. So we have to sit one day, and we're going to try to make this happen, make a debate happen with this flat earth thing, because we really want to know what the scripture says on this. And I'm no expert on Hebrew. I don't think you are either, John, are you?
No, I'm not an expert on Hebrew.
I'm no expert on Greek, and I don't think either of us are. But we have a lot of tools now that we can kind of check into and see what the Bible says on these things. So we're open to the idea that the earth is flat or that it is globular. And when we say round, of course, round is a shape, but it's not necessarily a 3-dimensional shape. A sphere would be a 3-dimensional shape. So it's definitely... Go ahead.
I think you're right, just to let the Bible speak for itself. And when you let the Bible speak for itself, you're doing yourself a world of favor. Like you said, we have a lot of friends doing a lot of tests out there and research, and we see it every day. One of the things that caught my attention about tonight's show that you and Zen had set up was the flat Earth and Enoch. And I have a lot of friends who follow the Enochian calendar, and for me, it's confusing. And I was glad to hear that we're going to hear a little bit about that tonight. And before the show, Zen mentioned the feast days in Leviticus 23, and as you know, all 3 of us, me, you, and Dan, we're huge into observing the feast days. So this is going to be a really interesting show tonight, and I'm looking forward to it.
Most definitely. I know Rob, our friend Rob, he's on NYSTV every week. Rob Skiba, most of you guys probably know who he is. Just got back from doing a test in Lake Michigan, and found some interesting results. And I think he kind of let the cat out of the bag with some of the stuff he said on Facebook today. So if you haven't checked it out, maybe you should go see what he said. But I'm not going to spill any beans for it. I know that got some information last night after he got off the water and told us about some stuff. So it's pretty interesting, the stuff that he found. And these are people doing real tests out there for this stuff. And also I want to tell you guys this too before we get started. We are going to be putting out these t-shirts here pretty soon, and one of them is going to have we think the one we're going to choose is probably the one with the menorah, and on the middle candlestick it says Yeshua. At the bottom of the candle or the menorah, it has the Hebrew letters for Israel on there, and it's really, really sharp and cool. If you go to our NYSTV Facebook page and check it out on there, you guys kind of vote. There's another design as well, but right now the consensus is everybody likes the one menorah, but there's another one that says 12 tribes on it that I like personally, but everybody else is liking the other one. So go vote on that, see which one you guys like, and we'll be launching that pretty soon. Another thing, we may or may not. We haven't. There's about a 90% chance, but we may be partnering with the Back to the Future conference in Austin, Texas. And if that's so, we will be actually going to this conference and doing live shows of Quest for Truth and different stuff with Rob Skiba and Doug, and doing some stuff like that. So be on the lookout for that. If we do, we will be telling you guys about it, and either way, we'll be telling you guys a little bit about it. So it could be pretty interesting if you're in the Texas area, and we'd love to see you guys come out. If not, I think we'll be streaming it as well. So it will be pretty cool. And you got anything else to say, John, before we welcome Zen on?
Like you said, you mentioned the Back to the Future. If that falls through, that's going to be a lot of fun for our group to go down there and be a part of that with John Gabrielson, Douglas Hamp, and Rob Skiba. Looking forward to that. But other than that, I'm really wanting to get into. I want to pick, Zen's brain on this Enochian calendar and the feast days, because that's a huge part of our family's life here is the feast days. And like I said, we have many friends who follow the Enochian calendar, and I'd like to understand it a little bit better. So I'll pass it back to you and see if we can't get this rolling.
We'll definitely get into that. It's part of his book that he has, and we'll get to that point. But Zen, welcome to the show, brother.
It's a pleasure. Always an honor, and glad to be here with your listening audience, and I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Well, most of the people here know who you are, but if not, kind of introduce yourself, tell people about the work that you've done first, and then we'll get into the subject.
Well, I'm an author and a radio show host, and I convert all of my guest appearances as well as the radio shows that I do into video for YouTube, and provide all of that freely to the listening audience and to anybody that's interested in any of the aspects of my work. And I cover a lot of different things from a lot of different angles, and I'm the I'm author of 9 books, and I'm working currently on my 10th, and I actually had too many pages, and so I had to strip out 6 chapters. The book I'm working on right now is called The Firmament, the Vaulted Dome of the Earth, and it was getting near over 500 pages, and so I decided to strip out 8 chapters, and I'll publish that as a whole different text on Paradise and the Sides of the North at some other point. But for now, I should be done with this one in probably a month, maybe even less. And it's a follow-up to my 9th book, The Flat Earth as Key to Decrypt the Book of Enoch, which, for those that don't know, it wasn't until I embraced the possibility that the Earth was not what we have traditionally been taught and indoctrinated into believing that I was then able to apply. There's a portion of the Book of Enoch called the Book on the Courses of the Heavenly Luminaries, which is, being someone that studies all of the extra biblical and extra canonical materials, I had read the Book of Enoch multiple times, and every time I read this portion of the text, I just could not make sense of it. And the reason being, now that I have discernment and I was able to decrypt all of those chapters and that particular portion of the book, is because Enoch is describing the motions of the sun and the moon as it applies to if you're looking down on the earth as if it's a clock's face. And if you apply the motions of the sun and the moon to our heliocentric worldview, as has been taught to us over the last 500 years, well, then you can't make heads or tails of what Enoch is talking about. And so I reviewed, when I first accepted that the flat earth was true as postulation, and that indeed, as the Bible, the biblical narrative says, the earth does not move, and that the sun and the moon move in circuit above the face of the earth, as it says in Ecclesiastes, and Solomon references 29 times just in that one particular book, that everything, all is folly under the sun. and he references this many times, under the sun, under the sun. And so when I applied this knowledge to all of those chapters in the book of Enoch, well, then I was able to understand it. And in that particular book, which is well in excess of 400 pages, I was able to show each one of the breakdown of what Enoch was talking about in each of those 14 chapters of the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries. And because most people have not been able to understand it, because we have embraced the heliocentric worldview and that knowledge has become lost, um, that I published that book. And it also, in studying and learning about and decrypting those portions of that chapter, of those chapters, I learned about the Enochian, the ancient Hebrew lunar calendar, and how it applies to the feast days and also to the determination of Sabbath, which is something that John was asking about. And I told him that I sent you the calendar and the breakdown of it, and how it's essential to understand how the ancient Hebrew calendar works according to the phases of the moon in order to determine Sabbath, and to know that because the lunar calendar, God's calendar, excludes the first day and Sabbath of the month from the other 4 7-day counts of the regular sabbatical weeks. Um, because the Gregorian calendar does not incorporate this exclusion, you cannot use it to determine Sabbath, because Sabbath is not one in every 7 days, as most people believe. Whether you're a Seventh-day Adventist and you celebrate Sabbath on Saturday, or like the Jews celebrate from Friday at sundown to Saturday at sundown, and mainstream Christians celebrate Sabbath on Sunday, they are wrong, mostly wrong. They're right every once in a while when Sabbath actually falls on those days, but they will be mostly wrong. And like this month, the Sabbath falls on Tuesday, and then next month Sabbath actually falls on Wednesday. And so, according to the breakdown of how God's calendar works, um, you cannot make determination of when Sabbath occurs unless you know how to determine that according to the phases of the moon, and what Enoch describes as the waxing crescent moon, which is full by at least 7%, because in the book of Enoch, this is what is called Kadesh, and Kadesh is the first day and first Sabbath of the lunar month. And then you have 6 working days in the second Sabbath, 6 working days in the third Sabbath, 6 working days, and the fourth Sabbath, 6 more working days, and then the fifth Sabbath. And then the fifth Sabbath and the new moon Sabbath are every other month back to back, which can be confusing, because that means that there are actually 2 Sabbaths in a row back to back, 2 days in a row. And sometimes the Sabbath is separated by 1 day according to when lunar conjunction happens and the beginning of the new moon month, the Kadesh. And so every other month the Sabbath is back to back, and every other month there is 1 day in between. And that's how God's calendar is.
I got a question. Is there anything
later.
in the canonized text that would refer to this this breakdown of the calendar? That Enoch, and I'm with you on Enoch. I believe that Enoch's book is probably inspired as well. I mean, after reading it and really just soaking it up, I can, except for this part, because of this part I just didn't understand when I read it. I mean, to be quite frank, but the rest of the parts that actually talk about the prophecies that were happening, the things that were happening in his time, and all that, they seem to line up exactly with the rest of Scripture. And obviously, we found it's the Enoch, I guess the relevance of finding Enoch in the Dead Sea Scrolls should have lit a fire under them to actually put it back with the Scripture, but it didn't. But is there anything for those people that don't believe Enoch is scriptural? They believe it's just a apocryphal book that could or could Some of it's good, some of it's bad. Is there anything in the Bible that would say, you know, this is the way you find out what the Sabbath is?
Um, Not specifically. It is hinted to, but it's not completely. Like this calendar is the same calendar that was given to Moses as well, and like the Book of Jubilees has a great deal of information according to what we're talking about, but it's not exactly broken down. A lot of people that have studied and looked into and specifically studied calendars going back over, in history in ancient times, they are then able to look at the Torah and and see and how and connect the dots to bring forth this as revelation. And yeah, it is contained. Like a lot of times you will see things happening um, specifically on the 1st, the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th, which according to the ancient Hebrew calendar, all of those days are Sabbaths. Every lunar month, those particular days are Sabbath. And so you'll see that that on those days the Israelites were not marching or doing anything. They weren't performing any particular tasks. And there's also sometimes where it seems like they are tasked with like marching around the city of Ai. Um, they march for 7 days, or and it seems like God is breaking Sabbath. But if you understand that how it breaks down and ties into like the lunar calendar, it could happen with you have the Sabbath occurring on the first day, and then the 6 days, and then they are marching, and then the last day is another Sabbath. And so the actual coming down of the walls occurred not on the Sabbath. But it seems that within the scripture, if you don't have the understanding of how these Sabbaths line up, well, it seems like he's breaking his own commandment, but he really is not. And for people that want to know more about all that, again, I would just study the ancient Hebrew calendar, because there is a lot of connections to it within the Torah and the canon. But again, my focus and my in this particular book was all about the book of Enoch. And I know for a fact that the book of Enoch is absolutely inspired. And the reason I can say that is because when I was able to decrypt it according to the revelation that, as it says in Isaiah, that the circle of the earth, and applying the motions of the sun and the moon as is described. Like when you read my book, you see how I break down every one of the passages, and this knowledge has been encoded into the book of Enoch. And now that I know for 100% with certainty that the earth is not what we have been told as being a sphere, and that it does not move. I mean, there is scientific evidence, many experiments, like the Michelson-Morley and the Gale experiments, the Sagnac experiments, Airy's failure. There's multiple scientific experiments which are repeatable even in this day and age, which confirm without a shadow of a doubt that the earth is not moving, that it is not spinning or rotating at 1,038 miles an hour as science asserts that it is. And that they claim that the earth is spinning once every 24 hours, and that's what causes the sun to go down, and that the sun is at the center of this solar system, and that we are part of a planetary system, and that the earth spinning once every 24 hours is what causes the sun to set and the sun to rise. Well, if we know for certain, and this is confirmable again by scientific evidence, real scientific evidence, that the earth is not moving, well, then the whole thing of the heliocentric worldview, that the earth is spinning once every 24 hours as it annually orbits around the sun, all of that can be thrown out the window without a shadow of a doubt. And so whether you believe that the earth is flat or if it's round, it's at least not moving. And so the dynamics of our living in a solar system where we're orbiting around the sun, that's all false. That's all fabrication. It's all conjecture, and it's not provable. And the real proof is that we do live in a geocentric universe, and that the Earth is unmoving, as it says multiple times in multiple passages within the Scriptures.
Okay, one question I have too. Okay, so in the book of Enoch, Uriel, the angel, takes Enoch above to look at everything. What did you see there that made you think the Earth is flat based on Enoch? What parts of Enoch were like, this is a flat Earth he's talking about here? What stood out to you the most?
There's a specific passage. There's actually a couple of them, and I can pull it out real quick. Let me go to the book of Enoch. But there's a specific passage, and it describes the motion of the sun and the moon as going from east to west and then north to east. And when you try to apply that to the heliocentric worldview, it just does not make sense, because how does the sun go from east to west and then back to the north? When, if the sun is setting and it rises in the east and sets in the west because the Earth is spinning on an axis as it's orbiting around the sun, well, then it can only go from east to west. And then when it spins past day and then the sun rises in the morning, it's going to rise in the east and then it will set again in the west according to the supposed spin of the Earth. And so those were two passages which absolutely did not make sense to me. But when I applied, and I'm going to pull it up now, but when I applied that to the motions of the sun and the moon, as if you were looking down on the circle of the Earth, as if it was a clock's face, and then the sun moving from east to southwest, and then northwest, and then northeast, and then southeast, well, then it's basically describing that as a circular motion. And it's basically describing the movement of the sun and the moon in a circular fashion. And so when I understood that this was what Enoch was describing as the motion of the sun and the moon, well, then I applied all of his descriptions of the motions of the sun, the moon, and the stars according to that premise, that he was describing their movements and their motions as if you were looking down on the circle of the Earth from above with the North Pole at the very direct center, as if you're looking down on the azimuthal equidistant projection map as displayed on the United Nations flag. And as soon as I pull it up, I'll actually read that particular passage.
Very, very interesting.
In that, I'm looking at Enoch 72, Zen, where it's Enoch 172, verse 2. Is that the one you're talking about?
I don't know. I have to pull it up. Read it and then tell me.
Okay, it says, and this is the first law of the luminaries. The sun, has its rising in the eastern portals of the heavens, and its setting in the western portals of the heaven.
Yeah, but there's something that where it describes it moving to the north.
Okay.
It's a little bit below that.
Okay.
What are the portals of heaven, in your opinion, Zen? Because that's an interesting word.
Okay, well, yeah, I'll describe that too. But let me pull this passage up before we leave, because I almost got it. Before we leave this train of thought, and then I will explain the 6 gates of heaven, because this is, it was it was this understanding that I was able to unlock the six gates of heaven, and I'll explain that too. But it's the Lawrence, I believe the Lawrence translation, and the verse is chapter 71, verse 8, and it says this: "The sun sets in heaven, and returning by the north to proceed towards the east is conducted so as to enter by that gate and illuminate the face of heaven." And so, he goes through this whole description of the sun's motion in this circular fashion. Well, when you try to understand this passage again, the sun moving from east to west and then north and then back to the east, it does not make sense unless you apply his descriptions of these motions as if you're looking down on the circle of the earth. Again, like the United Nations flag, the azimuthal equidistant projection map. And so that's what I did. I applied all of these motions to as if you were looking down on the clock's face, the earth as a clock's face. And a clockwise motion, the sun moves in a circle in a clockwise motion around the North Pole as center of the circular plane of the earth. And so when you do that, then you are able to unlock a lot of what Enoch is talking about as the motions for the sun and the moon. And again, Enoch describes in 14 chapters the motions of the sun and the moon. There's not one chapter or one verse describing the motions of the earth. And the reason being is because the earth does not move. It's the same thing for the chapter 10 of Joshua, why Joshua was given the power to cause the sun and the moon to stop in mid-motion as they were moving in circuit. Because it's the sun and the moon which move and not the earth and the moon as is depicted and portrayed in the heliocentric worldview. And so when you understand that, then you're able to understand even why in Joshua, why he was given authority to cause the sun and the moon to stand still instead of the earth and the moon, if indeed it is the earth which is spinning, which causes the sun to set and to rise.
Wow. So when you talk about that's interesting, man. And you have a chart for that, don't you, as well? That
Oh yeah, I break it all down.
Can you send me a picture of the chart, and I'll see if I can screen share it on here. And here in a second, if you can while you're doing this, and that way I can kind of post it up on the screen share if at all possible, because I'm wanting to learn this stuff, man. I'm in the middle of reading your book right now. You sent it to me before, and you sent it to me again today, and I totally forgot you sent it to me a long time ago, so I'm in the middle of it. I love the Book of Enoch, though, and I remember reading all those things, and I kind of skipped over them, to be perfectly honest, because I was like, what in the world is this talking about? The portals thing, when John read that verse in Enoch, what is that talking about, the sun going through these portals?
Yeah, let me send you this picture.
Okay.
And then I will
send it to me on Facebook. Send it to me on Facebook if you can on Messenger, because I can't open my email while I'm doing this.
One of the reasons why I got the cipher behind me, because we have a lot of friends on Facebook who do follow Zen, the Enochian calendar, and I'm one of those guys that have to sit down and figure this out for myself. And one of the things that interests me about tonight is maybe once you talk about the portals, how you were led into. I mean, where did you start when you started this research just for yourself? Where's the starting point for you? Because I've got Jubilees, Jasher, and Enoch, but it's the starting point for me. Where do I start? And that would be another question.
Well,
just hitting you all over the place.
As far as the flat Earth, I began with study of looking into the non-existence of curvature and the scientific experimentations which confirm that the Earth is unmoving. And so that's where I began, and then I went after that to the biblical narrative and was looking for support on all of the things, first the Earth not moving, and then the nature of the earth, and that's when I did a very intense study on Isaiah chapter 40 verse 22, which talks about that the earth is a circle and not a ball. And when you understand that what Isaiah is describing in that, with the earth and the heavens, the heavens spread out as a curtain above the circle of the earth, that they take on the form of a um, of a tent or a tabernacle, well, then it gives the same description as what Enoch describes in the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries. I just sent you a picture, John, of the 6 gates, and
Okay.
and then I'll explain this as you drop this particular picture into the chat room.
Okay. I'm gonna
Um,
try to drop it into the drop it into while we're talking here. If my screen share is working properly, it has failed me in the past, so we'll see how it's got going on. So we got the screen share, says it's going, but it's not. So present to everyone, not working. Let me send it to you, John, see if it'll work for you if you try to screen share it. I'll send it to you on Messenger real quick um, right now, and because I don't know I don't know. I got Google Chrome, and it's supposed to be the best with Google Hangouts, but for some reason I have a real problem. I don't know if I got some kind of block on here, but I just sent it to you, John, and I will actually send it in the chat as well, so people can check it out here. Let me rename this. But
maybe
yeah,
I can post it in the chat as well.
okay, go for it.
I'll see. I'm still new with all this Google Hangout stuff, so.
I'm been doing it for a while, but there's still so much I don't know about it. For some reason, I have issues with the
Mine's still doing the exact same thing. It's only showing the 2. I can't share it for some reason.
well, that's not
Do you
good.
just paste it in there? I mean, I don't know how you would put a photo into the chat.
I'm gonna put it a photo in it. I got the
Same way,
chat. I'll take.
same way you're doing screen shares in, with you for your picture. You just pull that picture up and screen share that picture instead of the picture you got screen shared right now.
Okay, all right, hold on then. Let me do that.
Okay. Yeah, and this is cool because there's so many people that have had questions about this stuff, and including myself.
Well,
In
this
this,
knowledge has been lost, like I said, for the last 500 years. Everybody that has studied the Book of Enoch since we've embraced the heliocentric worldview has not been able to understand that text. And so, which again, now that we do understand it, and now that we know that the Earth is not moving and that it's not spinning or orbiting around the sun, well, again, it confirms that Enoch is absolutely inspired, because this knowledge remained encoded within the text, and it confirms that it had to have been um, given to Enoch by a vision and the authority of the Most High God, in order for it to reflect the truth of the structure of our enclosed world system. And
very
so it's absolutely confirms the
so,
premise that it is inspired.
and there's also other things that confirm it too. If people don't know, I mean, Jude quotes directly from the Book of Enoch. Um,
Christ quotes directly from the Book of Enoch.
yep, that's true. And so, at the time, it was considered scripture. We found that by the Dead Sea Scrolls discovery, that it was definitely considered scripture at the time. So, and it was actually in the original King James 1611 version, from what I understand. So, you know, I think that there's definitely some, and we talk about people wanting to hide these things. I did post that in the chat, fellas, and I don't know if you're having any success with this screen share,
I'm
but
about to get it working.
it's in the chat. And if you're on YouTube right now and you are watching this but you're not in the chat, you can join the chat by going, if you go to the comments section, I actually put a comment in there that gives you a link to the page. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and put a link to the actual chat so you don't have to actually leave the YouTube. That way you can click on it. We've had problems with YouTube chat for some reason, and we have problems with Google Hangouts a little bit. I mean, we definitely appreciate it, but there's some problems with it. So what I'll do is I'll leave Well, he's
Okay,
already
I just
adjusted.
shared it.
All right, good deal.
Can you
Okay,
see
so
it?
I can see it. So explain to us what's going on here.
All right. So what Enoch describes when he breaks down the motion of the sun and the moon, he begins with the sun directly over the equator. You see the purple line in the very center? That's the equator. It divides the circle of the Earth exactly in half. And so he describes that it takes the sun 30 days to move through this fourth gate, and that it takes the sun 30 days to move through the fifth gate, and then it takes the sun 30 days to move through the sixth gate, and then it will reach on the summer solstice where the yellow circle is. That's the Tropic of Cancer, and that's where the longest day of the year is. You know, um, that's where the longest day of the year, the shortest night of the year, and then once it reaches this particular point, it reverses course and starts to move down. And so, and I'll actually share some of the passages from the book of Enoch, but I'll explain this first. And then Enoch describes how it takes 30 days for the sun to move down from the Tropic of Cancer back through the sixth gate to reach the fifth gate. And then it takes 30 days again to move through the fifth gate to reach the fourth gate, and 30 more days to move through the fourth gate to reach the equator again. And when it reaches the equator, it takes 1 day to cross the equator. That's the autumnal equinox. When it's moving south towards the Tropic of Capricorn, which is the orange circle, it will take 1 day to, when it reaches the different tropics, to reverse course and move in the opposite direction, or upon reaching the equator to cross over it. And so when it crosses over the equator, then Enoch describes that the night gets longer than the day. And so and that's exactly what happens when the sun begins to move south of the equator after the autumnal equinox. He then describes that it takes 30 days for the sun to move through the third gate, and then 30 days to move through the second gate, and 30 days to move through the first gate. And then on the winter solstice, which is the longest night of the year and the shortest day of the year, the sun will be directly over the Tropic of Capricorn. And then it will take a full day to reverse course and begin moving again in the opposite direction. And then he describes that it takes 30 days to move through the first gate, 30 more days to move through the second gate, and 30 more days to move through the third gate to where it reaches again the equator on what is the vernal equinox. And the vernal equinox begins the season of spring. Each time it reaches the equator or the different tropics, that begins a new season. And the ancient Hebrew calendar is linear, not like the Gregorian calendar, which begins in January in the middle of winter. The ancient Hebrew calendar begins actually with the vernal equinox, and that begins the season of spring. And then for the 3 months, the sun will be rising towards the Tropic of Cancer. When it reaches the Tropic of Cancer for the summer solstice, that begins the season of summer. And then it takes 3 more months to move down towards the equator once more, and when it reaches the equator for the autumnal equinox, that begins the season of fall. And then it takes 90 days to move down towards the orange circle, which is the Tropic of Capricorn, and when it reaches the Tropic of Capricorn, that begins the season of winter. And so you can see how, you know, that's the way it should be, the linear progression of the seasons and the movement of the sun back and forth between these 6 gates of heaven is what Enoch is describing in this particular book. And so I'll read some of the passages. All right, let me find where he begins. All right, Enoch 71, verse 11. Well, actually, I'll start with that passage about the sun moving to the north, 71:8. The sun sets in heaven and returning by the north to proceed towards the east is conducted so as to enter by that gate and illuminate the face of heaven. In the same manner it goes forth in the first month by the great gate. It goes forth through the fourth of those 6 gates which are at the rising of the sun. And in the fourth gate, through which the sun with the moon proceeds, in the first part of it, there are 12 open windows from which issue out a flame when they are open in their proper periods. When the sun rises in heaven, it goes forth through this fourth gate 30 days, and by the fourth gate in the west of heaven on a level with it descends. During that period, the day is lengthened from the day, and the night curtailed from the night for 30 days, and then the day is longer by 2 parts than the night. Enoch also, in describing the motions of the sun and the moon through these 6 gates of heaven as laid out by this particular image, he describes the night and the day being separated into 18 portions. When you do the math and you divide 24 hours by 18 portions, it breaks down to 1.33333 on into infinity hours. And so every time the sun moves through one of these gates, the day is lengthened by 1.3 hours as it climbs to the Tropic of Cancer, until the day is twice as long as the night when it reaches the Tropic of Cancer. And then it reverses course and the day gets shorter by 1.3 hours every time it moves through another one of these gates, until it reaches the Tropic of Capricorn, where the night is twice as long as the day. And so Enoch describes this in great detail in this portion of the text, and where he says, the day is precisely 10 parts and the night is 8. And I also have a table in my book where I break down exactly how many hours the night, as far as the night and the day, and their equivalency according to the movement of the sun through these 6 particular gates. And then remember, I said that he starts beginning on the equator, which is where the 4th gate is, and then he describes its motion through the 5th gate, the 6th gate, and then back down. So I'll continue so you can understand how this applies to what Enoch is describing. The sun goes forth through this 4th gate and then sets in it and turns to the 5th gate during 30 days, after which it proceeds from and sets in the 5th gate. Then the day becomes lengthened by a second portion, so that it is 11 parts, while the night becomes shortened and is only 7 parts. The sun now returns to the east and entering to the 6th gate and rising and setting in the 6th gate 31 days. Every time it reaches either of the tropics, or when it reaches the equator, you will see that it moves through 31 days. And that's just because each of the gates, it takes the sun 30 days to move through each of the gates. But once it reaches the Tropic of Cancer, it takes it 1 day to reach the Tropic of Cancer and reverse course, or 1 day to cross over the equator. And so you'll see that every time it does that, he cites the motion as being 31 days instead of 30.
I can tell you something right now from looking at this this thing right here, and one of the main problems that I've talked to Rob about, that he said that he's had with fully being able to defend the flat Earth model, was because the sun shows up for 24 hours during the Arctic Circle. But I look at the 6th gate there. Is that, when's the time period when that shows up for 24 hours a day in the Arctic Circle?
Oh yeah, that's the phenomena called the midnight sun. And yeah, that's when the sun reaches, like we just had the summer solstice, I believe it was on the 20th of June. That's that's when the midnight sun as phenomena occurs. And the reason being is because the sun has the smallest circle, um, and because it's closer to the North Pole than it is in any other time in its revolution. And so you are able to see it move all the way completely, um, in towards the, from the east towards the south to the west to the north and back to the east for multiple days. It will stay above the horizon. And
Wow,
that's,
man. This is the
Yeah.
only thing really like holding me back from the whole idea. And when I see it on here, the way you have it laid out, I can't say that I've seen anybody else lay it out this way. That's very, very intriguing to me. And I don't know if you've talked to Rob about that or not, but
Yeah,
uh,
I pulled out Enoch and read what he just read, and looking at this makes the most sense that I've seen so far.
oh, I absolutely know that it's the only way you can understand the Book of Enoch. This is the decryption to the text. I know for a fact that it is, because I'm able to explain every aspect of the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries by applying this motion to the gates as laid out by that particular image.
wow, that's super interesting, man. And that's something you have to talk to Rob about for sure, because that's one of the things that was kind of holding him back from winning a lot of the, not necessarily winning debates, but one thing they had a hang up on. And I think that understanding the Sabbaths and understanding all this stuff, this is really intriguing to me. I need to research it pretty heavy for myself to really, it's so hard though. You look at, thankfully I'm kind of self-employed, and I know John and Daniel that are on my show kind of are, we work when we want to because we're self-employed. But for people out there that have a normal everyday job, this could be this could be a real ground shaker. To have to change your Sabbaths every month with your employer and stuff. So I can see why a lot of people don't want to get into it. But now you talk about in your book about the luminaries, and how does this luminary idea, this vision, I guess he had, was it a vision about the luminaries that you talked about in your book?
Well, the luminaries are basically the sun, the moon, and the stars, and the what are referenced as the wandering stars,
What
which are
about
the planets.
what about the stars that are referenced to as like angels in the book of Enoch? What are the difference between the luminaries and the stars in that reference?
Yeah, all the stars are referenced as being angelic beings, and so, um, they do have that particular. Even in the Book of Revelation, where it says that the stars will come, fall to the earth as if they were shaken, um, as figs from a tree. In my opinion, that has association with the four angels. The angel that comes down, that opens the gates of the bottomless pit and releases the locust army. That's what is being referenced, and that the return of the locust army and the release of the fallen angels and the giants, the four angels which are, still caught up um, in the Euphrates River, and that the giants that will be released out of the north as part of the Joel chapter 2 judgment. All of that has to do with the fallen angels and the locust army that are going to be released, that are going to basically convict and cause the destruction of the 2/3 of humanity that is still upon the earth, um, and that are not written into the books of life. And in my opinion, all that will take place after the church is taken to safety, and that those that are remaining, that they are going to be destroyed by the very false gods that they worship, and that is the same thing that happened during the time of the Exodus, when the Israelites were worshiping certain reptilian beings, and they were terrorized by them. The whole thing with Moses putting the brazen serpent up on the pole. After that, what is not. It wasn't just regular snakes that were tormenting them. It was these feathered serpents, these dragon-like reptilian entities, and there's an allusion to it in the Book of Enoch. I mean, the Wisdom of Solomon, which is very interesting because it talks about how these reptilian entities, these dragon-like entities, are able to breathe fire, and also how they can kill just by looking at humanity, sort of like gorgons, like Medusa.
Okay. One question I had. You talked about in your book. You have a chapter called "Is this a cult? Is the flat Earth a cult? Forbidden knowledge type scenario." Now, do the people that are the occult people, the higher level people, do they know that the Earth is flat? Because from what I can understand, it seems like the fallen angels, and not only the fallen angels, but the regular angels, when we talk about in Enoch, and then also in Isaiah, that where it talks about him kind of putting the stars out like a tent over the circle of the earth. And a lot of people, when they hear circle, they're thinking, well, the earth's a globe, so it's a circle. But it describes them kind of like putting it out over as a tent, and also says there's columns there. Is the occult knowledge, the hidden knowledge, is this what they believe? What do they believe?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, just the fact that they fly this as an emblem on the United Nations flag, which is the seat of world government, is basically them laughing at humanity for believing in their false globe theory, the heliocentric worldview, which they perpetuate, which they know is nothing but a web of deceit. It's their way of laughing at us, and the fact that they fly this particular the azimuthal equidistant projection map, which is the way that you have to apply the motions that are being described again in the Book of Enoch and the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries to that map as laid out on the United Nations flag in order to make any kind of sense of it. It's their way of proclaiming victory over us, and it's their way of, like a Masonic gang sign, a hand sign of basically flashing it in front of us and making fun of us and laughing at us at the same time that they are celebrating it as occult knowledge. And so, absolutely.
In your opinion, Zen, would you say this would be the Great Deception, a Great Deception?
I think it is absolutely part of it, in that it gets even deeper, because the next aspect of the whole Darwinian heliocentric worldview is the ancient alien aspect, which they are going to try to convince us, and they already have most of the world primed for this. You can tell just by the popularity of the Ancient Aliens show on the History Channel that much of the world is willing already to believe that the ancient aliens created us. And that is going to be the next aspect of the Great Deception. And yeah, this absolutely has everything to do with the strong delusion that even the very elect would be deceived upon if it were possible. And look at how many people are. I mean, 99.98% of the world believes that the Earth is a planet, and that we're part of a planetary system, and that we are moving, spinning on an axis once every 24 hours as we orbit once a year around the sun. I mean, look at how many people that buy into the Darwinian heliocentric worldview. Not only do they believe that we have evolved of apes or monkeys, but they believe that there are thousands, millions even, of Earths out there, planets just like ours, that happen to evolve life just because their particular planet happened to be in the Goldilocks zone, and that it's not because God created life and that we were made in the image of the Creator and the Maker of all things, but because the planet happens to be at the perfect extent, distance from their sun's light, that life just somehow happened to evolve. And so look at how many people have bought into that and how many people believe in science, and how many people, because of that, don't believe in God anymore, or believe that the earth is special, or that humanity is any way special. This, in my mind, absolutely confirms that this is one of the greatest deceptions and absolutely part of the strong delusion which we were warned about. And then, for those that say that the flat earth has nothing to do with salvation, well, they couldn't be more wrong, because there are more people that have been led astray and led into believing that we evolved a monkey and denying God as the creator of humanity and our home as far as the earth, um, that have believed in science and what NASA affirms. Um, More people have been lost and deceived and led astray into not believing the Bible as the authority and the Word of God, because of what we are talking about as far as the heliocentric Darwinian worldview.
As a biblical truther that you are, Zen, and I appreciate the research that you do. And this is kind of off topic, and we've seen that holistic doctors over the last several years, have been murdered in their homes or mysteriously taken down or taken out because they've exposed something of a multi-billion-dollar, almost trillion-dollar industry. And then you take something like NASA and Ancient Aliens and all of the History Channel and all that stuff that they're doing, and then you get guys like yourself out there who is putting this stuff out there. Do you ever feel that you're being watched at all?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I
Okay.
mean, there's too many strange things that happen in the work that I do, the radio shows. I mean, even the last two books that I've worked on have mysteriously become corrupted, and I've had to reformat them and bring them back up to par from older versions, and I've since learned to save multiple versions on multiple external hard drives. I mean, to back up all the work that I do, because of the weird anomalies that happen in with the radio shows that I do and the books that I write. And absolutely, it makes you feel like something is not right, and that certainly you are drawing more attention than you um, should, and that just the weirdness. And I'm sure that Rob and others feel the same thing. But
I don't know if you
but
guys
yeah,
remember the guy that I had on about the flat Earth comic book that came on. Vince is his name, not too long ago. Are you familiar with that guy, Zen?
no, I'm not.
Okay, well, he made a flat Earth comic book, and it's really interesting the way he did it. Basically, he's trying to get the truth of flat Earth out there through a comic book, and he had his house broken into, threats from people that say they're in the military, um, mysterious calls and stuff. He had to move out of his house literally in the process of getting that flat Earth document or flat Earth comic book done. It should be coming out here pretty soon, but it's pretty interesting. It's about this superhero. Anyway, not to plug it, but the superhero that goes above the Earth and figures out the Earth's flat and all these
Oh,
crazy
wow.
things. It's pretty neat.
Sounds very cool. Good for him. But well, I'm glad that I haven't had to deal with it to that extent. Pray that the Most High protect me from all of that, and I'm grateful that I'm not. And I pray for anybody that has to, deal with it to that degree, because people are targeted, and there's a lot of strangeness that goes on. People are murdered every day for things that they know and things that they share and the work that they do. And I think that one of the reasons why um, in the work that we're doing with the flat Earth is just they feel almost a level and a degree of protection just because of the insanity, um, that most people, even when confronted by the truth of it, will deny it and will not even begin to investigate it, just because they believe it to be so ludicrous. And so that I think that kind of insulates those of us that are doing the work in this regard. Whereas, like the holistic doctors that are bringing forth information that the vaccines are the cause for autism or Alzheimer's and dementia, that many of them have lost their lives for revealing such and going against the medical establishment, and that they are very much a real threat to the bottom line of these pharmaceutical industries. And being doctors, they're very much believable. But whereas those of us that are they like that, the people that like myself that are doing this work in regard to what the biblical narrative affirms, um, the connections to the Bible and the flat Earth, a lot of people just think is that we're giving the Christians a bad name. But this is the truth of it. And as I said, in regards um, to salvation, how many people have been led astray by scientism and by the belief in evolution, and that we are living on a planet which again spins once daily as it annually orbits around the sun. I mean, so many believe science, and look at how many astrophysicists and scientists are atheists and deniers of any kind of a supreme being or any kind of a creator. Um, and so it, to me, in my opinion, is just confirmation that scientism as a religion, because that's really what it is. It's all based on faith. There's nothing to do with facts about it, because the real facts deny, completely nullify what they teach. And look at all the kids that in school that are raised in the educational system that are taught that we evolved monkeys and that we live on a planet and that there's many Earths out there and that life only occurred out of random because of again that the planets are raised in the Goldilocks zone. I mean, they believe all that and buy into that, and because of it lose relationship with the Most High God. And because of that, they deny the Gospels as being inspired, and never, because of that, also never come to have relationship with the Son of God, Christ, Yeshua, Savior, Messiah. Um, and and so it absolutely is a salvation issue, and it's led more people to not believe in salvation and to have no relationship with God and Christ as the authority of salvation. And so I think it's absolutely critical because of that thing, and just that one thing. And then again with the Enochian calendar and its connections to really being able to determine when Sabbath occurs. I mean, there's a reason why it is the fourth commandment. Sabbath is absolutely very important, and unless you can determine when it occurs, you can't even keep up with when the Levitical feast days occur as well, because all of those are determined by Kadesh and by um, when they happen. Like the Feast of Unleavened Bread. As I said, every 1st, 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th is Sabbath according to the lunar calendar. And every 15th, which is when the Feast of Unleavened Bread occurs, is falls on a Sabbath. And unless you make that determination by Kadesh, you can't celebrate it in the way that it's supposed to be.
Absolutely right. That one thing I would definitely want to hit on that you said is that it can lead to deception, just like evolution can lead to deception. There's a lot of Christians that want to try to fit their beliefs in with evolution and globalism as well, which up to just recently I've decided, like, the scripture does give us an idea for a flat Earth, and I hate saying the word flat because it's really not flat, but you know what I mean.
Right.
It gives us a design for that in the scripture, and so it's hard for me to want to believe anything NASA says, that according to NASA, NASA in Hebrew means great deception. Werner von Braun, a Nazi scientist that started the whole thing, it's hard for me to want to believe what they say over what the Bible says. Even though I can't rise up to the heavens to look down on the earth myself, I still have to take what the Bible says with more weight than what NASA says for right now. And that's where I'm at with this whole thing. And I would hope people that are listening right now would really kind of take that into consideration and think, because if we go by what science says for sure evolution is true. And most of us here would not believe that. But give us 30 years from now, 40 years from now, everybody will believe that. There will be no creation this, creation that. They're already starting to paint people that teach creation as child abuse, that teaching their children creation is child abuse. So they're already trying to paint that picture. So it's something really to think about, for sure. There's no doubt about it. Now, we have some questions in the chat from what I understand, John. Is there any way would you like to ask the first one on there? I kind of got lost on here.
Let's see. Yes, this one, quick question for you guys. Are you aware of how the waters are referred to in the context of the sun in Genesis 1:6? In the Hebrew, it's Ben Mahim Laim. I can't pronounce it right. The 4 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. The waters in the sense of the sun. I guess what he's saying is the dome of Genesis 1:6. Have you done research on that?
Yeah, that's what my new book is about. And as I said, it was almost over 500 pages, so I had to remove 6 chapters, and it's still going to be near almost 400 pages. So yeah, I've done very extensive research on this particular topic, and it's my opinion that the book that I'm about to release on the firmament as the vaulted dome of the earth, it will be the most extensive book ever written on the firmament. And I've looked it up, and I've only seen one other book on it. It's called the Firmament, the Sky Dome, and it's based on a heliocentric worldview. And so, in my opinion, it's got to be absolutely wrong in its premise, because according to the biblical narrative, the Earth is not flat. I mean, the Earth is not a globe. It's not round. It's not spherical. And even though, it's not flat per se, you have to realize that what is being described in the first 4 days of creation is that the earth is recreated after becoming desolate, after becoming an undistinguishable ruin. Like when you study with the Strong's Concordance and look into the earth was without form or void, which is Haya Tohu Va Bohu, then you understand that something led to the earth becoming a desolate waste. And then what is described in the first 4 days of creation is the recreation of the earth. On the second day, the firmament, which is a solid structure, a domed canopy, a heavenly curtain, is placed above and fitted to the circle of the earth. And then on the third day, the dry land is separated from the waters below. And where we have sea level all across the plane of the earth was lifted up past what is sea level, and that's how the dry land appeared. And then on the 4th day, you have the heavenly luminaries being created and placed into the firmament of the earth, and below what is the solid canopy of the heavenly curtain. And my book that, as I said, that I'm writing right now, which I should be done in less than a month in publishing, covers this in great detail. And I use and share parallel accounts of the Genesis creation story from multiple angles and points of view, with many of the extra biblical texts which affirm the same 7 days of creation, just with different detail and from different perspective. And when you put all of those together in parallel account and line them up, one after the other, well, then you get a great understanding on what is being spoken about in the Genesis account on the first 4 days of creation. And when you study these other extra-biblical accounts, you get, again, even more elaboration on what occurred on those first 4 days.
You like how I gave you that first question, John, with all those Hebrew words in it? So
No, I did that to you last night during the show. And during last night in the show, there was a question that was similar to this, Zen. It came from out of the complete Jewish Bible, where it keeps using the word dome as the firmament, and the dome being the sky. And that's where I think this question is coming from, because that's the best version that I've read about, on Genesis 1:6. Was out of the complete Jewish Bible, as it's using the word dome in and of itself.
Interesting. I haven't seen that. I'd be interested in getting a link to that, or if somebody can let me know exactly what that is talking about. I'd be interested
Well,
in checking it out.
if you go to Bible Gateway, on Google, and just and it gives you a list of all the Bibles and translations, and you use the Jewish biblical context, it will show you dome of Genesis 1:6, the complete Jewish Bible. It's
Okay,
really
cool.
cool.
All right, yeah, I'll check that out.
Mark is asking, one of the questions in the chat room is, why do you, Zen, think that the book of Enoch was deleted from the canon?
Well, I believe that it was deleted in order to hide who the fallen angels are as far as the Watchers, and also that the rebel angels were cast out previous to the second incursion of the fallen Watchers during the time of Yared, and that the rebel angels were already here and cast down to this earth before even the modern creation of Adam and Eve, and also to hide the whole thing that which the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries, which confirms that the earth is not a sphere, and that indeed it is not moving as is described in that particular part of the book of Enoch, where it describes the motions of the sun and the moon again, and there's not one chapter or verse on the motions of the earth. And so all of these facets together, if I was the enemy, I would definitely go after the book of Enoch, and I would try to exclude it and disappear it and eradicate it, and especially because it's about them. They are the ones, they're trying to hide their presence. They're trying to stay in the shadows and rule from the shadows and push forth the agenda for the New World Order. And as I said in the last show that we did together, it's only by understanding that there are two different bloodlines here, and that the sons of Adam are completely different from the sons of Cain, and that the New World Order elites are linked to the sons of Cain, and that they worship a different God than who we worship, that they celebrate their fathers, as Yeshua said, ye are of your father the devil, that they worship the fallen angels who are their fathers, and that's why they're dedicated and allied and have allegiance to the New World Order as agenda. And that's why they have been warring against the sons of Adam since the Genesis 3:15, the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, that began with Cain and Abel. Cain being the stepson of Adam and murdering his half brother Abel, who was replaced by Seth. And if you look up the name of Seth, it means compensation, replacement, substitute, which Seth was a substitute for Abel, because Abel was the firstborn son of Adam, and Seth, his being murdered, Seth was a replacement that begat all of Adam's line and the children that were born of Adam, which includes Yeshua, as confirmed in Luke chapter 3, verse 25 through 38, I believe it is, where it gives the lineage of Christ, and Cain is excluded from that lineage.
Interesting. What our next question, John? Where is it at on here? Is it Mark's question? Is that where we're at, or are we at Keith's? Did you already ask Keith's question?
I asked Mark's question, so we're right at Keith.
Okay, and Keith was the one where he said, why would they hide the information? Why would they hide this information? How could such information be kept from everyone? That's a good question. That's a question I had when I was like, why would they hide it? But I think we discussed some of the reasons why, because kind of, it's a good way to leave God out of the equation. But why else would they hide it, and how do they hide it?
Well, they hide it in plain sight, just like they do with, the flying the azimuthal equidistant projection map on the flag of the United Nations as the seat of world government. They hide it in plain sight, and the reason they are able to do so is because for the last 500 years, they have convinced all of humanity that the Earth is a one of 9 planets in orbit around the Sun, and that it is the Earth and all of these other planets which are spinning in orbit around the Sun, and not the Sun and the Moon which are moving above the face of the Earth, as is spoken about and described in the Bible and the Book of Enoch and other places, and um, which I depict in this particular book, as well as this next one that I'm writing on the tabernacle of the Sun, which it gives description of in chapter, I believe, 74. I'll actually pull that up. In the Book of Enoch, it describes the Earth, the Sun and the Moon moving above the Earth. I think it's 74 verse 9. Let me pull it up. I think this is it. Hold on. Yeah, here it is. This particular passage. It says, it's 74 verse 8 and 74 verse 9. It says, of heaven, and in the world, that they might rule in the face of the sky, and appearing over the earth, become conductors of the days and the nights, the sun, the moon, the stars, and all the ministers of heaven, which make their circuit with all the chariots of heaven. And so Enoch describes, again, the motions of the sun, the moon, and the stars in below the firmament and in the face of the sky, above the earth, which is exactly what Solomon describes in the book of Ecclesiastes, where he says that, 29 times under the sun. All is folly under the sun, things like that.
Very cool. The next question comes from Jason E. He asked a question for Zen. In a flat Earth system, FE system, does the motion look kind of like a yin yang, a Chinese yin yang?
He's talking about the movement of the sun over the between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, and yeah, it does. I believe it's called the I forget exactly what it's called. There's a specific word for it, called analema or something like that, and it shows, like, if you take a picture of the sun over the various months of the year, throughout the 4 seasons, it has this figure 8, this infinity sign, that kind of motion to the movement. And it's basically showing that the sun, as it moves towards the Tropic of Cancer, that it is also rising in the sky. And that when it moves down south towards the Tropic of Capricorn, that it gets lower in the sky, which again shortens and lengthens the day and the night, according to Enoch's description of the movement of the sun through the 6 gates of heaven, which we talked about earlier in the show. And this is also reflected in the story of Isaiah chapter 38, where Hezekiah is given a sign, and the Most High makes the sun go back 10 degrees on the sundial, which it's only by understanding that it's the sun moving in circuit, in revolution above the face of the earth, which causes the sundial to work as it does. And that if it was the earth spinning that caused the sun to go down, well, then the earth would have had to completely stop in motion, reverse, begin spinning in the opposite direction, go back 10 degrees to bring back the sun 10 degrees, and then begin its motion back, moving towards the east. And can you imagine what kind of tsunamis and earthquakes and uh, pole shifts, even? I mean, the kind of chaos which would have been created um, if the Earth actually did that in order to create the sun to go back 10 degrees, as is referenced in Isaiah chapter 38. I mean, many people would have died, and um, there's no account of that anywhere in the scriptures. It was like nothing even happened. It was just another regular day, except for the sun went back 10 degrees before it was allowed to continue in revolution above, just like in Joshua, where the sun was stopped. If it was the earth spinning which causes the sun to set, then the earth would have had to have been stopped in rotation. And can you imagine with them saying that the earth is spinning at 1,038 miles an hour to all of a sudden come to a standstill? What that would do to the oceans and the lakes and all the waters? I mean, there would have been massive tidal waves and tsunamis, and thousands, millions probably of people would have died just from the waters emptying out of their basins, whether oceans, lakes, or seas. It would have completely just, the momentum of it um, continually moving, it would have flooded into the land and destroyed and just murdered just massive numbers of people. And yet none of this is accounted for in the book of Joshua or the book of Isaiah.
Excellent. Joe was wanting to see if you couldn't just reiterate what you said about the Antarctic sun issue being solved. He didn't quite understand the description
It's not the
of it.
Antarctic
He said
sun.
maybe you can.
It's the Arctic sun.
Well, that's what he said. I'm just reading the question. He didn't quite understand it, so if you could go into that just a little bit to help Joe out, that would be cool.
Yeah, all right. If you look at the image that I posted on the 6 gates of heaven, you'll notice that the yellow circle, the inner circle, that is the Tropic of Cancer. This is where the sun is located when it is closest to the North Pole, which the North Pole is in the direct center of the circle of the Earth. And so it would be located in the very center of this yellow circle. And so that's where the North Pole is. And so when the sun comes closest to the North Pole and it reaches the Tropic of Cancer, you have what is referenced as the midnight sun as phenomena, which absolutely confirms the whole premise that the Earth is a flat circular plane, because there's no way that you could see the sun move in complete rotation throughout the sky and stay above the horizon for over 24 hours. It just could not happen according to the heliocentric worldview. And so the midnight sun is absolute confirmation that we live on a flat circular plane. And so when you're in the very northern latitudes, in the very northern regions during the summer solstice, you can actually see the sun remain in above the horizon for more than 24 hours. And the reason you can do so is because as you look at the circles, the yellow circle, the purple circle, and the orange circle, well, when the sun is located above the Tropic of Cancer, its revolution is the tightest and the smallest that it is at any other time of the year. And that's why you can see it remain above the horizon. Now, when it begins to move down back towards the equator, its circuit increases in length and distance. That's why you are not able to see it remain above the horizon, because it expands its movement and its distance. And also another thing which is interesting about what is being depicted by these 6 gates of heaven is that the sun daily adjusts its speed, and it is never the same. And when it is above the Tropic of Cancer, where the yellow circle is, it is moving at its slowest rate of revolution. Because remember, each one of these circles is equivalent to one 24-hour period. And so when it's moving in this very small, tight circle, this yellow circle, it has to move slower in order to maintain one revolution with one 24-hour period. Which is why, because it moves so very slow during this time, that the tundra, the frozen wasteland of the Arctic, completely changes, and summer becomes a boom, and everything, all the creatures have their ruts during this time. They breed during this time. All of the tundra, the ice changes into lakes, into rivers, and the mosses and the trees and everything grows. The mushrooms, the grasses, everything grows during this time when the sun has this tight revolution and is moving in its slow motion. It completely changes the landscape of the Arctic during this summer period, which is not repeated in Antarctica during its summer months, because as you see, according to the orange circle, the sun is having to move at its greatest distance and to cover a greater and wider area, more so than any other time during its annual circuit. And because of that, it has to move very swiftly. It has to, I mean, you would say that the distance it has to cover is twice as great as what it does during its revolution when it's above the Tropic of Cancer. And so the 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 winter solstice, when the sun is located directly above the Tropic of Capricorn, it moves very quickly and swiftly, and the day disappears very rapidly in the southern latitudes. And summer in the southern latitudes is nothing like summer in the northern latitudes. It's still very cold when the sun goes down, and not anything like um, the movement and the motion of the sun during the summer months in the northern latitudes.
Somebody asked, since you're talking about the southern hemisphere, what about the star pattern in the southern hemisphere? Michael asked. Um, yeah, that's what he asked. How can any of you flat earthers describe how the southern hemisphere stars work on the flat Earth model?
All right, think about this. Now, you see, according to the map that I have, that when you are located in southern latitudes, if you are looking towards the north, you're going to see the movement of, okay, remember that the center, very center of where the yellow circle is, that the very middle point, that's the North Pole. That's where Polaris is. All the stars move in the same motion, in the clockwise motion as the sun and the moon, as depicted by these circles. Now, when you're looking south, if you're looking towards Antarctica, you're going to see the motion, the very edges of what is the firmament moving in the opposite direction. And so the stars will move what seems to you to be in the opposite direction, but that's only because you're looking south and you're looking at the very edges of what is the bowl, the dome of the firmament. But if you look to the north, you're going to see the stars moving in the same northern, in the clockwise motion as everybody else. And so it's the same thing, and people just don't understand that the Earth is very much larger than what they believe, and that the dome, the firmament, is fitted to it. And so the very edges where the Antarctic regions are, the very ends of the Earth, if you're looking southward towards those, you're going to see the very edges of the dome, and they will be moving in the opposite direction. It's that simple.
Very good. Hopefully that explains to Michael how it's done. Let's see here. Chris Rock asks, he apologizes, and he says, this has probably been asked before, but could you explain the gates or portals one more time in Enoch? What are they? And I know you went into it right before the show. I think you got in a little late, Zen.
Okay, the portals, as is, you see the numbers on this map, on this image that I have. Number 1, which is right, the first gate is right above the Tropic of Capricorn. You see that? And then the second one corresponds to the second ring. That's the second gate. And then the third gate is right below the equator. And it's the gate that is the northernmost above the Tropic of Capricorn, but still below the equator. And then you have the fourth gate, which is above the equator, moving towards the Tropic of Cancer. The fifth gate is that middle gate, where the 5 is, and then the sixth gate is the one at the very top, and it's the circle which actually touches the Tropic of Cancer. Those are the 6 gates as spoken of, as divided by the motions, the movements of the sun as it moves back and forth between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. It will, as I said, Enoch begins his description of the sun's movement when it's on the purple line, which is the equator. And then he describes how it, every 30 days, it will move through one of these gates. 30 days to move through the fourth gate, 30 days to move through the fifth gate, 30 days to move through the sixth gate, and then one day, the summer solstice, one day for it to reach the Tropic of Cancer into reverse course. And then Enoch describes its motion southward, 30 days through the sixth gate, 30 days through the fifth gate, 30 days through the fourth gate, and then one day to cross the equator once it reaches the purple line. And then he describes 30 days for it to move through the third gate, 30 days to move through the second gate, 30 days to move through the first gate until it reaches the Tropic of Capricorn. And then it takes one day, the winter solstice, for it to reach the Tropic of Capricorn into reverse course. And then he describes it moving 30 days through the first gate, 30 days through the second gate, 30 days through the third gate until it reaches the purple line, which is the equator, for the vernal equinox. And that begins another solar year.
Very cool. This one's another one from Joel. He says he's 100% on board with the flat Earth because of all the research that he's done. But one thing he couldn't figure out was the meteorites that fall to the Earth. Do you have an answer for that? Have you looked into that?
Well, I think the meteorites and other phenomena, like we see the different meteor showers, that the sun is going through some portion of those particular places, and that I don't know whether it's a portion of the firmament which is loosened that causes debris to rain down. I don't know exactly what these are, but in my opinion, it's not huge. Like even the planets and the celestial luminaries, they're not bodies like we think of the Earth as terraform. Even the other planets, they're just heavenly luminaries. They're stars, wandering stars, as asserted by the Book of Enoch. But that there's twice. Once in the summer, I believe there's a Perseid meteor shower, and I forget what the other one is called in the wintertime. But it seems that there's something which rains down debris, almost like maybe it's chunks falling off of the firmament, and whether the firmament replicates itself and heals itself, and I don't know what exactly it is, but everything is contained under the vaulted dome of the firmament. And so even like with Planet X, I mean, I don't know what exactly that is. But there seems to be some veracity to it because it's mentioned as wormwood in Revelation 9. In the Colburn Bible, it's depicted as the destroyer, and there's a lot of other phenomena that seems to be connected to it as some type of object. What that is, I don't know. But even like with Halley's Comet, with its return every 74 years or whatever it is, um, it has it in similarity. It has a revolution which makes it visible um, for that period of time when we are able to see it. But in similarity, it has motion and movement according to just like all of the other stars which move around Polaris. Polaris, like the North Pole, is the fixed star. It's the only star that does not move in the celestial night. All of the other stars and heavenly luminaries move in circuit around it, just as is seen in the star trails when you look at the time-lapse photography or the videos which are compiled of the motions of the heavenly luminaries during the celestial night. They all move in circuit, in rotation around Polaris as the fixed star. And so all of the other objects that are within the, under the vaulted dome, um, they are in similarity. They have to be in movement in the same degree, in the same manner. Where they come from and what they are, I don't exactly know. But this is all still relatively a new study for all of us. There are things that we are still trying to learn and figure out, and we need more and more people to come to the truth of this as discernment, so that we can begin to look into some of these questions and to come to answers on a lot of the phenomena that remains uncertain with regard, even like with what is it that is causing the shadow to move on the moon during the lunar eclipses? Because we know it's not the Earth's shadow. The Earth is the foundation for the heavenly luminaries. It doesn't somehow come between the sun and the moon and cast a shadow on the moon during a lunar eclipse. There's something else that is causing that shadow to occur in regular cycles to where it can be predicted. And what that is, we don't know. Some say that it is part of the mountain which stands as the what is referenced in as the Rupes Negra, which is the black lodestone mountain, the magnetic mountain, which stands supposedly as the highest mountain in the world at the very center, at the North Pole, at the very center, and that it's a magnetic mountain, which is why all the compasses point north towards it. But that this is supposed to be the highest mountain in the world, and some say that it's this particular mountain that when all of the the lunar eclipses occur, that it's the very top of this mountain that casts the shadow on the moon. But who knows? I mean, we don't know. We've never even seen this mountain at the North Pole, which is purported to be there by many explorers, 14th and 15th century explorers that actually made it there, and which talk about, I don't know if you know of anything of what I'm talking about, but there are descriptions of this huge magnetic mountain, and that there is also um, a giant whirlpool that sits and surrounds this particular mountain that sucks in all of the waters and the oceans of the world and drains it into the great abyss. I mean, we've never seen these things, but they are purported to be there. And so there's a lot of things that we don't know, that we're still learning about and still discovering, and that's one of the reasons for my writing the two books that I have on these particular topics is to explore the ancient accounts and also the extra biblical narrative, which is in connection to all the things that we're talking about now.
All right, man. For our next question from Victor, could those be the stargates they want to open with CERN?
Um, no, I don't think so. I think what they're trying to do with CERN is that, and I cover this in my new book, because it's my opinion that the firmament, being a solid structure, was put into place in order to imprison the fallen angels, which again were cast out before the modern creation of humanity, and that they were here previous even to Adam and Eve in the last 6,000 years of the modern era, but that firmament was put into place to keep them contained here. And I think that CERN has to do with opening some kind of Stargate technology, which is also referenced in the Emerald Tablets, where it talks about them calling up these ancient interdimensional beings from the great deep below, and how they um, are trying to they're trying to find a way to escape the judgment that is coming, because ever since, even when Legion was confronted by Yeshua, they said, "Have you come to torment us before the time?" And so they recognized him first as the Son of God. They recognized that he had the authority to judge them, and they recognized that their time would be up when he returned. And so, ever since the blooming of the fig tree, which in my opinion was the recreation of the nation state of Israel, the fallen angels, the rebel angels, know that their time is almost up, and that they have had a sense of urgency to try to replicate, to lead humanity into creating some of this ancient technology so they can find a way to escape past the firmament and get to wherever they think they're going, so that they can escape judgment, because they know that it is coming and that this is the final generation. According to Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21, where he says that to know ye the parable of the fig tree, that when you see its shoots come forth, the shoots, its tender shoots come forth, that you know that your redemption is nigh, and that the season, that this will be the generation that sees the fulfillment of all the prophecies. And so, since 1947, when the nation of Israel was decreed to be recreated as a nation state, which occurred, I believe, on May 11th, 1948, they know that their time is almost up, and so they are trying everything they can, which is why in this last generation we have seen so much as far as the UFO phenomenon, um, the acceleration of technology, the creation of the internet. I mean, so many things have occurred in our generation, which um, history used to pass much slower and in slower degree, but now things are accelerated I mean, things, I mean, just even in one generation, even our children's, they are growing up way different than any previous generation had ever been exposed to the kind of technology and the kind of things that we are seeing unfolding. And it's because we are at the end of days, in my opinion.
That was interesting. Next question, I gotta switch gears on you, Zen. Mark asks, is the sun always the same height above the earth, or does it move higher and lower as it travels through the gates?
It seems to move higher. Whether that is just because that's the way that we see it, um, according to its movement across the spectrum as it moves north towards the Tropic of Cancer. Um, but according to the analemma, which is the description of the movement of the sun, according to this figure eight, this infinity symbol, it seems to move higher as it moves towards the Tropic of Cancer, and to move lower as it moves to the Tropic of Capricorn. Now, whether that is true or not, and whether it actually is moving um, up in the sky and moving vertically as it moves towards the Tropic of Cancer, I don't know. I don't know if that's just because of the laws of perspective that we see the analemma portrayed in this manner, or if it actually is gaining in velocity as it moves towards the summer solstice and the summer months for the northern latitudes, or if this is just a trick, an illusion, and that we perceive it that way. I don't know.
Hey, Zen, I want to ask you something. There's a guy in the chat room that's talking about the stars in the southern hemisphere again. He said you didn't answer his question, so I asked him to be more specific with his question. He said, why do the stars spin in opposite direction in the southern hemisphere as the northern hemisphere? Is that true that that happens? Is it not true? And if it is or is not, what proof is there?
It is true. And again, I told you that if, like, look at the map, the image of the six gates of heaven, and if you are sitting in the like in the very southern part of the South America, or if you're in the very southern portion of Africa, or in the very southern portion of Australia, if you are looking north towards the North Pole, you're going to see the stars moving in clockwise direction. But if you're looking south towards Antarctica and the outer circle of the dome and the firmament where it connects to the ends of the earth, you're going to be looking at these stars moving in the opposite direction. I mean, it's just, again, because of the laws of perspective, and because the earth is of much bigger size than we believe it to be or consider it, and that it's laid out as a dish and not as a ball. And so again, in the northern latitudes where you're closer, this is another thing. Even below the equator, what you can see Polaris and the stars moving in clockwise fashion if you are looking towards the north, even at latitudes of 20 degrees below the equator, 20 degrees southern latitude, you can still see Polaris. If we were living on a ball, that should not be possible, because you would have to be looking through the oceans, the curvature in the oceans, because supposedly at the equator, that's where the Earth is its widest. That's where the circumference of the Earth is supposed to be at its greatest. And so as you move south of the equator, the circumference of the supposed southern hemisphere is supposed to get narrower and narrower until it reaches a point at the South Pole. And so you should not be able to see Polaris or any of the northern stars from a southern latitudes, but you can. And this, again, is confirmation that the Earth is a flat plane. I don't know how he wants me to answer it any better than that.
It makes sense, perfect sense to me, that what you're saying. I mean, it takes a little bit of looking at what you're saying and actually visualizing it, which I think you did a good job of doing it with that map on there. So hopefully Michael could understand what you were saying there, because I mean, when I'm looking at what you're saying right there, it makes perfect sense. So Michael, hopefully that answered your question, because what he said was an answer, and it was a valid answer, and a good explanation. It may not be the explanation you wanted to hear, but it is an explanation. So let's move on to the next question. John, what's the next question?
Did you already have the CERN question answered?
Yeah, the CERN question is answered.
Okay. Let's see. Well, this goes really right off the rails, Zen. Totally off topic, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on this as well. Mark asks, what is the significance of the Gothard Tunnel ceremony in your opinion?
Well, it seems to be a continuation of some of the other satanic celebrations. Like, even Easter is a fertility festival, and like um, Christmas trees, there's celebration of phallic symbols and fertility festivals, and it was a giant orgy, which is the way that these Satanists celebrate on these pagan holidays. They have huge orgies, even during the times when they were sacrificing children on these statues of Moloch by, you know, basically heating up these statues to very high temperature and then laying these babies on the statue's extended hands and basically cooking them to death. They would, while these babies are screaming, they would have these huge sexual orgies where there was, homosexuality and just huge exchanging of partners, people sleeping with multiple people, and just huge, massive orgies, and that a lot of the pagan celebrations are celebrations in that way, and so the Gothard, um, that particular what we see reflected, and it wasn't a complete orgy, but it was like a mock celebration, that they were uh, to different levels of undress, and they were basically mimicking a celebration in that way, and so it was the same kind of satanic celebration that occurs in these other pagan holidays like Saturnalia and things of that nature.
Okay. The next question is from Cot, C-O-T, Cot, I guess is how you pronounce it. Is there still a weightless orbit for satellites, space shuttles, etc.?
Well, the thing about the way that satellites are said to be able to stay in orbit is that they would have to be always falling. And that can only occur if the Earth was a ball. And so I don't see that satellites can exist in the manner that they say they do, as well as the way that they say that they are created out of the substances that they say they are created. And the reason I say that is because when you look up the temperatures of the thermosphere and the other higher levels that these supposed satellites and also the International Space Station that they're supposed to be orbiting in, there's no way that they could sustain the extremes in temperatures that they say exist within these particular thermospheres. And if these satellites are indeed made of like gold as a component to refract the radioactive waves of the sun and to protect electrical components or solar panels, there's no way that they could exist in the manner that they do. And for them to say that there's these 20,000 satellites up there in space and there's never any collision among one, and there's never ever any of them breaking down, and the space station has never hit or never has a near hit with one of these satellites, it just does not make sense to me. And in looking into and studying about the International Space Station and also satellites, why is there not any imagery, any videos, any authentic photographs of them being deployed in space? Why is there not multiple uh, websites that are 24 hours streaming of that show us the Earth in all of its glory from space? In its supposed roundness, in its sphericity, in its godliness. Why is there not live webcams from multiple satellites depicting the Earth in this manner every day that we can look at and log into and check out for ourselves. And the fact that these things don't exist makes me question whether what they affirm is truly valid, and whether there's any kind of truth to what they say. Because if indeed the Earth is not moving, and the Earth is not round, and the Earth is not orbiting the Sun, and those things come into question, well then I'm most certainly going to question all the other things that they affirm as being part of the structure of space, and also of what they affirm as accomplishment. You know, like even now, I was just writing about this the other day about how Kelly Smith of he's a NASA engineer, and he talks about in a video that was released on Orion Trial by Fire, where they're talking about their attempts to create a manned missions to Mars, and they're talking about how they're not able to get past the Van Allen radiation belts, and that they're not able to do this even in this day and age, but yet supposedly they were able to do it during the Apollo lunar missions, and that they were able to make it to the moon and back multiple times with technology that is not even as complex as our current cell phones. It does not make any sense. And so, and then the other thing is with Barry Cybrell's a funny thing happened on the way to the moon when he received that footage of the Apollo 11 astronauts trying to fake and utilize the window in the lunar cabin, inside the lunar cabin, to depict the Earth as a sphere. Well, why would they have to hoax that if the Earth really is a sphere? Why not just show it to us in the way that it is, rather than hoaxing it? And the fact that they are hoaxing it and trying to propagate and perpetuate that it is a sphere makes me wonder why they are having to do so. And the fact that we don't have thousands, millions even, of photographs of the Earth as a sphere, and these live streams, video images, and movies of the Earth as a sphere, makes me question the authenticity of what we've been indoctrinated into as far as the heliocentric worldview.
Do you want to take one more questions in? Would that be okay?
Yeah, as many as you want.
Okay. Well, there's one from Bruce, and it goes into the dome. It says, could you ask Zen, did it help humans back in Enoch's time, why men used to live more than 900 years old, the amount of pressure of water above the firmament? Can you ask Zen, does this play into the fact that lifespans were so long back then?
Well, in my opinion, and I write about this, it's my belief that humans in the earlier, the pre-flood era, that they were of larger stature, even what we would consider to be giants. And this is affirmed by the work of Ron Wyatt and also Jonathan Gray, who went to confirm Ron Wyatt's discovery of Noah's Ark in Turkey. That there, the wife of Noah, his second wife, with whom he had the child Ham with, she was buried there, and the natives, somebody had dug up her bones, and they discovered that she was 14 feet tall. The bones were, her stature would have been about 14 feet tall. But anyways, it's my belief that the early generations of humanity, that they were also of larger stature, and that's why they had longer lifespans, as well as that the conditions and the environment were completely different. But that after the flood of Noah's day, even the longevity and the lifespan of the giants in the book of Enoch, it's described as being shortened to 500 years, and that humanity after Noah, their lifespans would be reduced to 120 years, and so we see that reflected in two generations after Noah. His generation immediately after him lived 400 plus years, and then after that it kept reducing and reducing until 120 years. But that it's my belief that even the stature and the lifespans of humans previous to the flood of Noah's day, that we were larger in stature, and that's why we also had longer lifespans.
Very true. Ron Wyatt made a lot of interesting discoveries. I saw the documentary that he had, and it's very, very interesting. I saw the one where he found the place of Exodus, the mountain where Moses had reached the top. He also has different things about. I believe he's the one that found had the underwater camera that saw the chariots underneath the water.
Oh yeah. You're talking about where they split the rock and the water came up, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
it's very, very great discovery, man. That guy was led by the Holy Spirit for sure to find a lot of these things. And,
absolutely. I agree.
He definitely had to have been. So what I want to ask, there's a common question here. How can people get their hands on one of the ancient Hebrew calendars that deals with the Sabbaths being on, different days each month?
Well, I've got it. I'll give you the link for it, and I'll put it in the chat room. But I basically created it, and I have a link for it. It explains, as I was talking about earlier, Sabbaths this month fall on Tuesday, and Sabbaths next month actually fall on Wednesdays. And, you cannot make this determination unless you exclude the first day Kadesh, which is the 7% waxing crescent moon, which is always the first day and the first Sabbath of the lunar month. You have to take into account the way that the God's calendar works is it excludes this day from the other 4 7-day sabbatical weeks, and that's why God's calendar fits perfectly with the lunar cycle of the moon, because the lunar cycle of the moon, the synodic month, equals to 29.531 days. And the way God's calendar keeps up with this is by alternating between 29 and 30-day lunar months. So one lunar month will be 29 days, the next one will be 30 days, the following one 29 days, the next one 30 days. And so there are 6 months in the lunar year which are 29 days, and there are 6 months which are 30 days. But in each of these lunar months, you have the first day, Kadesh, being the first Sabbath and lunar, and the first Sabbath and day of the lunar month, and then you have 4 7-day sabbatical weeks following. And so let me post that into the chat room. And
Are you in the chat room on the website here, or are you talking about on YouTube?
I'm talking about on the Google Hangouts here. I'm about to post it in there.
Okay. I don't know if we even have a chat going in Google Hangouts or not, but we do have one going on our site here.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Well, then let me.
Okay. No. I see right there where you're at, but I don't think it's public for everybody to see, so I'll post it on our other chat. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry,
yeah,
man.
I'm not.
Yeah, we've had a lot of issues with our group chat for some reason on Google Hangouts and YouTube. For some reason, it's just every time we do it, it just shuts down almost immediately. But we do have over 200 live listeners right now, which is pretty awesome. And we do have quite a few people in the chat and our website. So definitely an interesting show. We're right at around 2 hours in, and I want to have you back because I don't think we touched the surface of some of the stuff that we could talk about tonight. And I know we'll schedule another one so people can get the rest of the questions. There was a ton of questions in the chat. I kind of, after that last one, I think that we're probably going to have to end it out for the night.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yep.
Also, this will give you a chance too, brother, to take a look and actually read through some of the book, because I know you didn't know that you had it. and that I had sent it to you in electronic copy. But you're welcome to share it with your, your other crew members and let them take a look at it as well. And like I said, I sent you the Enochian calendar, and then you can read the chapters in the book and then look at the calendar to get a better understanding of how it works and how it plays out. And yeah, and then we can go into it in greater depth next time.
Very, very thankful, Zen. And John, thank you for being awesome co-hosts and keeping track of the chat and stuff. And it was interesting conversations in the chat. Thank you guys for coming, even the ones that didn't agree with what we were saying 100%. It was great.
Totally agree. It's like, where'd you go, John?
My son just woke up, and he say hi, Levi, to everybody.
Hey, Levi.
We've been sound asleep this whole time, but I guess he woke up. So
the next host of Now You See TV is standing right behind you.
I can't wait till he's old enough to go interview people on the street and put a mic in their face, because that's going to be the next move there. So when he's a little bit older, he's going to do it, aren't you, Levi? Yep. Very cool. So anyways, thank you guys. High five until next time. We can't wait to talk to you again.
Shalom.
Yeah, just let me know. Shalom. God bless all. Good night.